أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين بالقاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين الهداة المهديين واللعن الدائم على أعدائهم أعداء الله أجمعين من الآن إلى لقاء يوم الدين. قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن الكريم: أفحكم الجاهلية يبغون ومن أحسن من الله حكما لقوم يوقنون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the honor of Rasulullah, His immaculate and infallible family, Ahlul Bayt, especially the master of the woman of the universe, Fatemiyya Zahra, let's recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. There are some questions repetitively we answered on Mimbar, but as a reminder, I'm going to say it one more time, and hopefully for a while I should not review and come back to this question. And the question is that why we commemorate events that took place more than 1,000 years ago. Why we talk about history so much. Why we celebrate, commemorate, and it's always about the past. And of course, with saying that, I'm talking about certain groups of people, they add some kind of insult to that with saying, we live in present, let's focus in present, let's live in the present. And I've answered this question before. If the one who says this, that why we commemorate and celebrate and talk about the life of Fatemiyya Zahra or Abu Abdullah al-Hussein or the Prophet, if they're Muslims, so they should know Quran is all about the people of the past. Hundreds of stories and incidents that took place in the past, from Adam all the way to Nuh alayhi salam, to Ibrahim, Ismail, Yaqub, Yusuf. They are subjects of many chapters and many verses of Quran. So it should not be a new thing for a Muslim. And also Quran clearly said in Surah Hud to Rasulullah that we mention Anba al-Rusul, the stories, the news of the prophets of the past, precedent messengers of God, for a few benefit that it will have for you and for the believers. Number one, لِنُثَبِّتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. Number one is to create that sense of strength and firmness for your heart. With the stories of Quran, with the histories of the past, you understand that the truth will prevail. When you read the story of Yaqub and what his brother done to him, and eventually what happened at the end, it gives you that sense of strength to believe in the plan of God and not be afraid of plotting and planning against you. So that's one thing. With the stories of the prophets of the past, it gives you that strength. We must find the same benefit from Fatemiyya. When you participate in these gatherings and programs, we must find strength in these majalis to maintain our faith, to have endurance facing difficulties and probably sometimes crisis of identity that happens for all of us. We need sometimes an anchor to hold on to. Secondly, Quran said in the stories of Quran or Rasulullah, the second benefit is جاء بالحق. The truth came with the stories. So you are able to recognize what the truth is and what the falsehood is. Similarly, with the stories of Fatemiyya and reviewing the history of Fatemiyya, it gives us ability to recognize truth and falsehood. That's a second benefit. The third benefit, Quran said, وَمَوْعِظَةً. It's an advice. When we tell you the story of Yaqub or Yusuf or Ibrahim or Nuh, there's an advice in that. In the stories of Fatimah to Zahra, there is an advice for us, which I will come and I give you some of those advice as well. And lastly, Quran said, وَذِكْرَى لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. In the stories of Quran, there are admonitions or reminders for the believers. In the stories of Fatimah to Zahra, the lifetime of Ahlul Bayt is similarly. There are reminders and admonition for the believers. So that should be enough. My answer to those is not trying to go philosophical and sophisticated on that answer. Oh, let's talk about the benefit of the history, studying history and all that. Rather focusing on these four benefits of Quran. That when we examine the past, specifically related to prophets and certain individuals that we consider them to be noble, these are the four benefits we look to attain and gain. In Fatemiyya, Muharram, Ghadir, Ramadan, and any other event, look for these four benefits. To find strength, something to firm your soul and heart. This is very important. It's important to look to find the differentiation between truth and falsehood. Try to have that insight and ability. Third and fourth is in look for advice, an advice that we listen. And fourth is to have reminders, admonitions to encourage us and inshallah motivate us to do what we have to do. So now we go to lessons. If you remember on Tuesday and Wednesday, we discussed some lessons from the Sermon of Fadakiyya. One was regarding the importance of Quran. Second night was the importance of taqwa. Tonight is another verse that Fatimah to Zahra addressed in her speech or in her sermon. There is a description which is unique and at the same time thought-provoking. When Fatimah to Zahra addressed Muslims and she says, when Prophet was alive, the impact of shaitan on Muslim ummah was not the same as it is today. And then she used the description of a turtle. Said the way shaitan was, that you know how turtle is going back basically, when they feel a threat, they hide, right? And when it comes to the moment that they feel safe, they eventually show and you can see them moving around. Hazrat Zahra said the way of shaitan is like a turtle. When Prophet was, he felt the threat and he hid himself. And now that the Prophet is gone, shaitan is coming back and it's showing itself, and I can see in your words and actions. And one warning that she says is that hypocrisy start to show itself and prevail itself. Nifaq and hypocrisy. The speech of tonight, one thing is about hypocrisy and nifaq. This is the title of tonight. And then I talk about one of the causes of hypocrisy, which is ignorance, jahl. These two words are the main word of tonight's speech. Nifaq, jahl. Hypocrisy and ignorance, and they're connected. There are underlying cause for one another. There's a tradition which also you can find it in commentary of Nahjul Balagha of Ibn Abil Hadid, and the tradition is that on the last days of the life of the Prophet came to the mosque as he was ill. And it was one of his last visit to the mosque. So he addressed Muslims, said his final advice, final piece. Even we have the tradition of thaqalain, the two weighty and valuable things that he will leave behind, Quran and his family. He said it in that sermon, in his final lecture in the mosque, that I will be leaving you soon. And I will leave Quran and my family for you. As long as you seek guidance from these two, as long as you hold on to these two, you will be protected. You will be safe. Then I then said, I won't be coming. I can't come anymore to the mosque. Do you have anything to say? Do you have any question? Do you want any help? And in the tradition said that somebody stood up and he said, Ya Rasulallah, inni rajulun kadhab. He said, O Messenger of God, I'm a liar. Unfortunately, I'm a man who's lie quite often. And then Rasulullah prayed for him. Said, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove this sense and this need of lying from you. A second person stood up and said, Ya Rasulallah, inni rajulun na'um. I'm a man who sleeps a lot. That's my issue. And Rasulullah prayed for him, said, Ya Allah, idhab anhu an-nawm. You take away sleeping too much from him. And then a third person stood up, said, Ya Rasulallah, inni rajulun munafiq. Said, I'm a hypocrite, I'm a munafiq. And we have a third person, so he was talking to Prophet. So Prophet was praying for everyone. And by the way, admitting to your shortcomings, your flaws, especially before the Messenger of God, is a quality. And we have from the sign of ignorance is somebody not knowing their own flaws. And at the same time, somebody not knowing their powers, their value. If you don't know how much you're worth and you value, what you're good at, or what you're bad at and your flaws, that's a sign of jahl and ignorance. Somebody who's wise that they know what they're good at and what they're bad at. What they know and what they don't know. They have no, let's say, illusion of what the truth of their character is. They know who they are. Because sometimes we think we're something, and after thinking deep down, we know who. We pretend, maybe in social media, I pretend I am someone. I post something philosophical or something political or something, but in reality, I'm just copy-pasting someone else. I'm not that intelligent. People know who they are, and this is the minimum for being wise, by the way. So when this person stood up and said, I'm a hypocrite, we have a third person told him, sit down. What are you doing? أنت فضحت نفسك. You humiliated yourself. Why you're admitting you're a hypocrite? Sit down. And by the way, this person didn't say it to the liar or the one with the sleeping issue. He said it to the hypocrite. And Prophet, after he heard both comments, he said it's better. Said fuduh. Fadahat means humiliation. Said فضوح في الدنيا خير من فضوح في الآخرة. So to be humiliated in this life is better than to be humiliated in the day of judgment. This is not to push people to humiliate themselves deliberately. It's about that type of humiliation that sometimes we don't do the right thing because we're afraid maybe people make fun of us. Or maybe we will be humiliated. For example, praying in public. Not those who pray in the middle of the path, which they shouldn't, and somewhere they shouldn't pray. Some people, they have this phobia of praying in public. Even if somewhere is lawful, they still have that concern. I said, I don't want to be, people look weird. And the word weird itself in English has a lot of meaning, by the way. When they say weird, it means, it's awkward, it's weird. It's one of the things is I feel embarrassed to pray in front of others. And then we have the other disease, people who cannot stop praying in front of others. They only pray when they see others, right? You have that issue as well. So, hypocrisy was a disease that people admit to Prophet even. What is hypocrisy? It's to say something you don't believe, by the way. Hypocrisy is to say or to act for something or some way that you don't even believe in it. For some far-fetched plan or dream that you have. That's what hypocrisy is. So I pray, but I don't believe in God, but I pray. That's what hypocrisy is. Right? And we have to understand it. I've said that people called their parents hypocrites. I said, why? I said, oh, they're very nice with my cousins and other people's children, but with their own children, they're very strict. They're this and that. And they called their parents hypocrite. And I said, what do you mean? Do you even know the meaning of hypocrite? I said, oh, they don't treat me the way they treat other children. I said, because they are not their children. They're not responsible for them. You are his child or her child. They feel, they care for you much more than any other child. That's not hypocrisy. That's priorities. It's like that you don't sleep in the same dress and the same suit that you come to masjid with. You change. You don't call you a hypocrite for that. You wear something suitable for the bed, you wear something here. That's not hypocrisy. Oh, you have two attire, you have two suits. These are not hypocrisy. People not understanding the meaning of hypocrisy, they confuse it. You behave in a certain circumstance in a certain way. If somebody, let's say you go to a funeral, the way your face has to act, it should be different. Your facial gestures has to be different from when you go to wedding. You have two different faces in wedding and funeral, and that doesn't make you a hypocrite. It makes you a decent person. Hypocrisy is to pretend you believe in something that you don't. For example, if I smoke and I come to Mimbar or I come to you and said, smoking is bad, don't smoke. I don't smoke. When in reality I'm lying about it. I love smoking. That's what it is. And the issue of the Muslim Ummah, Fatemiyya Zahra said, is that hypocrisy starts to show itself. And for a hypocrite, if you want major symptoms, Prophet said if somebody has 3 symptoms, they are munafiq, they're a hypocrite, even if they pray or fast. Does not change it. Praying is not the cure for that, for hypocrisy. Fasting is not the cure for hypocrisy. There are 3 symptoms for it. Number 1, lying. Lying. You say something that you don't believe or you didn't do or you did. That's one is literally lying, is to say something against the truth. So the one who lies quite often has the first symptoms of hypocrisy. Second, somebody who breaks their promise quite often. If you make a pact with someone, you give them your word. Forget about signature and fingerprint. No, you give them your word. You do something and you break that word quite often. That's including marriage, by the way. When you get married, you give your word to your spouse, whatever is that agreement. Islamically, that's a pact, that's the ahad, that's the covenant you made. That could be your dowry and mahr. That could be you telling them that you do your responsibility as a wife, as a husband, or it could be conditions. That's the second sign of a hypocrite. They break their promise very easy. Their word means nothing. That's what a hypocrite is. The same way they came to Imam Ali and said, Bakhin, Bakhin, laki ya Ali. In Ghadir, they congratulated Imam Ali. And then later on, the word means nothing. Third, those who betray people's trust, amana. Somebody do khiyanat, betrayal, that's the third sign of a munafiq. You can't trust them. You have to literally have a pair of eyes in the back of your head with those people. They're going to stab you in the back. This is a munafiq. And Fatemiyya Zahra is warning about this. In Quran, there are 300 verses of Quran about hypocrisy and hypocrite. 13 chapters of Quran discuss hypocrisy in details. Because there's a disease. It was a disease, still is a disease. And social media, again, I'm not a big user, but I've heard from people talking about it. So people, they first come acting religious and collecting a lot of followers, and suddenly they become someone you don't even know. Hundreds, thousands of followers come and follow them because they talk about MashaAllah, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah. These are basically the keywords. And as soon as the followers come, then they become this very modern thinker. Let's use that word. Suddenly everything, Yeah, people change, I understand. But when you see a pattern, it's not about change anymore. So that's what hypocrisy is. The second is I talk about the roots of hypocrisy come from ignorance and jahl. Jahl is one of those subjects that, again, we can talk. There are books, thousands of pages written about ignorance. And the more and more we know about ignorance, the more we understand we know nothing about ignorance, by the way. And we have that when Fatemiyya Zahra was giving her sermon, one of the reasons they took away Fadak from her, they said that prophets have no inheritance. And Fadak was not even an inheritance. Prophet gave her before his death. Inheritance is an Islamic concept. It's in all the chapters of Quran. But they made a tradition that the tradition said messengers of God don't have inheritance. But nowhere in Quran this was mentioned. In inheritance, for example, in Surah Nisa, which is a lot of verses about inheritance, Allah could have said, yeah, inheritance, this is what goes to boy, this is what goes to girl, this is what goes to the spouse, to your son, to your daughters and all that, your grandparents. And didn't say, except Prophet of God, he's an exception. It has no example. Not even in previous prophets. But they made it, prophets don't have inheritance. And Muslims said, yeah, Prophet said it. Even people said, we heard it from Prophet said that I don't have any inheritance. Interesting. So then Fatemiyya Zahra used this verse 50 from Surah Ma'idah. After answering that question that, is it true or not? Said, أَفَحُكْمَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ يَبْغُونَ is the ayah of Quran. By the way, what's the ayah occasion of revelation? Is as a group of non-believers, and there were people of the book, they came to Prophet and said, you want to be Muslim, fine, people who want to be Muslim, fine, but let's keep the rule of ignorance era, pre-Islamic era. Let's keep the rule like that. Don't change anything. And Quran said, أَفَحُكْمَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ يَبْغُونَ do you really want the judgment of the ignorance time to stay? After the truth came, after the messenger of God came, after all this came, and you still want to, let you continue bearing your own daughters alive and starting war whenever you please, and having, no sense of how many wives you can have, go for it. These are all ignorance era time, right? Pre-Islamic era known as ignorance era. Why? Because what they were doing was not based on any logic, reason, or rational. They were doing whatever they please. There's a drought. What was their way of dealing with drought? Tie a stick to a tail of a cow, put it on fire, and let the cow run. The louder the poor animal screams, drought is going to be over soon. And just thousands of these kind of ignorant practices and rituals. So Quran responded, it's not going to happen. أَفَحُكْمَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ يَبْغُونَ do you want the judgment of the ignorant time to stay, to be established? وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ مِنَ اللَّهِ حُكْمًا لِقَوْمٍ يُوقِنُونَ what's a better judgment for the people who have certainty than the judgment of God, than the rule of God? So Fatemiyya Zahra used that verse to say that you call yourself Muslim, but the way you are saying to deal with my inheritance is an ignorant era because I'm a woman, because I'm a girl, and this person is powerful, you don't want to give the daughter anything? Read the Quran. Did anywhere in Quran Allah said Prophet is an exception from inheritance or no? You will not find any verse in Quran. And then she said, what happened that you placed the Quran behind your back? You threw it away. So the word is Jahiliyyah. Jahiliyyah, it's referring to ignorant. In Quran, there are four. Word Jahiliyyah have been used in four contexts. And I wanted to know those four contexts, because it helps us to be familiar with them. This was the first one. Hukm al-Jahiliyyah. You want the rule of the Jahiliyyah, you want the rule of the ignorant time, you want the judgment of the ignorant time. What's the code of life for you? What's the structure you want to live based on those cultures? And is this even when Muslims became Muslim, we have a lot of unfortunately bad cultural practices, and we have some good. In some cultures they kept those bad practices. There's a long list of it, we can tell you. From female mutilation, it's being practiced in North Africa, done by Christian, Muslim, and anyone. They kept the culture. Even when religion came, they kept the cultural part. Or you can go to some societies, the way they built an area for the woman, which is very, very small. When you go to Imam Raza Ziyarah, Imam Hussein Ziyarah, the way you see the Ziyarah is built is women have their side, women have their side, men have their side. But when you go to some masajid that some cultures they built, is all the area for the men, and then there is a small corner in one corner, a very small spot for women. Did Allah say to do that? That's the way the mosque of the Prophet was built? No. Culture says that's the way you should treat women. That's hukm al-jahiliyyah. This evil eye, unfortunately, yes, there is evil eye, but to burn expand, whatever you say, however you pronounce it, putting these big, weird shaped rocks. They're literally hanging garlic, which if you see, alhamdulillah, we took it from everywhere. The garlic has some connection to Dracula and repelling Draculas, come from Eastern Europe, but we have him. And then you have that weird rock, they call it something. Is it traditional? Is it Islamic? Is it any tradition about it? No, but we do it because everybody does it. Hukm al-Jahiliyyah. Even abuse of women. The way Fatemiyya Zahra was treated, the way she was abused. This was the way Arab used to treat women, kick them, hit them, slap them. And Islam came and said, what are you doing? Hold on. If you cause a bit of harm, you have to pay punishment for it. There's diya for it. If you cause bruise on somebody's skin, regardless of their gender, you have to pay punishment. You have to pay diya for that. Forget about killing the infant child as they're pregnant. أَفَحُكْمَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ يَبْغُونَ. What happened? Are you trying to keep and revive the ignorance culture, ignorance rule? So that's one. Hukm al-Jahiliyyah, judgment of ignorance era. Second word in Quran is Hamiyyat al-Jahiliyyah. The word Hamiyya means prejudice, bigotry. And Quran says, do you want to have this prejudice that comes from ignorance toward one another? The ayah refers to the non-believers, those who have kufr. Their mentality is that they have prejudice that comes from that ignorance. Hamiyyat al-Jahiliyyah. But against that, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, recite the salawat. Allahumma salli ala. Hamiyyat, ta'assub, prejudice is preconceived notion about something without any reason. For example, Arab is better than Ajam from non-Arab. That's what asabiyya, hamiyyat is about. This color this skin color, this skin tone color is better than that one, right? Even gender, this gender is better than that gender. Those who have this, those from that city are better than the people from that city. These are hamiyyatil jahiliyyah. We have the other word that the other night they asked, which is advocacy or zealousness, which you advocate for something good, like somebody's love for their homeland, which is fine. But prejudice and hamiyyatil jahiliyyah refers to something without a reason. You love your homeland because of your homeland, right? This is somewhere you grew up, your ancestors grew up, you have something to stand for. Even Islamically is something that's been recommended and supported. But prejudice is that, let's say, this is the translation of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam from prejudice. He said prejudice is that you like the worst of the people from your city or from your people. You like them better than the best of others. So let's say somebody who's horrible but is from my city. I like that person better than a good person who's not from my city. I sit with that bad person in the same table, and I will not sit with that good person in the same table because of which city we come from. So the commonalities that we have is nothing good. There's no good values we have in common. It's just something irrelevant, such as, I think, which city you were born, or which skin color, or which culture, which whatever. And this would have been done. Again, that also plays a role in the story of Fatimah al-Zahra, because Ahlul Bayt from the beginning, their standard was the standards of Quran. So for Ahlul Bayt, it made no difference if somebody was Arab or Ajam. If you're Salman, Salman is somebody who's literally come to Fatimah al-Zahra's house, help Fatimah al-Zahra in chores. But even there were some Muslims who did not like Salman as much because he was an Arab. And when it comes to the tax time, the non-Arab were discriminated against by the Khulafa, not by Ahlul Bayt, by Khulafa, because they were not Arab. And there were some excuse used against them. So prejudice, Quran used it as another form of ignorance. Hamiyyatil jahiliyyah. What's for us in this? There's a lesson. What kind of prejudice we have? What are we standing for? What's most valuable and most important to us when we make decision? From companionship to marriage to partnership to anything else that we want to create, we're looking for something to pick this over this. And we will pay the price for that, I promise you. If we choose prejudice and bigotry to make decision, we will be ruled over, and we will be people who bigots and people who have a lot of prejudice. They will be the one ruling over us, deciding for us. The third one, Quran said, ظَنَّ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ يَظُنُّونَ بِاللَّهِ ظَنَّ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ. They have this false notion of God. ظَنَّ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ. Dhan means false notion, suspicion. But one form of ignorant is those who have false notion even about God. Even when they think of God, they have that false notion of God. God is cruel. They are always in going to extreme. The God that they have a notion of is too kind that you can do whatever you want to do and nothing matters, your action doesn't matter. Or a God that they believe in is a God that is cruel or, God forbid, unjust, and regardless of how much good you do, you still will be doomed. That's also come from ignorance. ظَنَّ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ. And the fourth one is تَبَرُّجَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ. Tabarruj means display. When you show something. In this ayah refers to people who their style, their fashion is the fashion of the ignorant. And Quran is telling them, understand, who are you looking your fashion after? Who are you dressing after? Literally, this is what Quran says. So don't dress like the dress of the ignorant. Don't display something that is come from the ignorance. You should come to that decision and understand what is tabarruj al-jahiliyyah, the display of ignorance. Again, social media plays a lot in this. From the hypocrisy to even display of ignorance, social media is becoming a double-edged sword. We can do so much good, as a lot of people do a lot of good with it, and at the same time we can destroy things. We can destroy our own life. Our own life. I used to think that some things are just, people say it in stories and books and movies, and in real life they're not really like that. These are just dramatized way of looking at things. And then I end up talking to people with problems, and I've seen, no, there's some instances that in real life you see them. A real life example of that you can find. For example, one of them was, I used to think that couples who fight over social media usage are just in movies, and in comedy, sketches and all that. But people came and said, my issue with my husband is that the type of people he likes and texts and make comments on. And I say, is that a thing? Unfortunately, I was so clueless. Or the husband said, my wife is this. And what we display. So inshallah, that's enough for tonight. Inshallah, we wrap up. The subject of tonight from the sermon of Hazrat Fatima was the two issues she addressed: hypocrisy and jahiliyyah and ignorance. Remember the four types of ignorance Quran mentions. We have hukm al-jahiliyyah, the rule and judgment of ignorance, the era of ignorance. We have hamiyyat al-jahiliyyah, we have prejudice and bigotry of ignorance. We have dhann al-jahiliyyah, we have the false notion even about God, that which come from ignorance. And then we have tabarruj al-jahiliyyah. We have this display of ignorance, that blindly following a fashion could lead to that. And one lesson for all the brothers who are sitting here is that when you listen and when you hear the story of Fatemiyya al-Zahra, understand the danger of abuse that could take place within our families. How we can think about the slap in the streets of Medina to Fatemiyya al-Zahra, and God forbid you raise your hand or I raise my hand against someone, against some, even worse than that, a family member. Even a few cases of abuse is too many. It's too many. Unfortunately, I know some few instances of cases. We have tradition, Prophet said, if somebody slap their spouse, hit them, in the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make an angel to prepare a whip made out of fire to avenge that one hit, that unjust hit against the spouse in the day of judgment. And who can tolerate that? The punishment of Allah in the day of judgment. How can I cry for the musibah of Fatemiyya al-Zahra when I don't understand that, God forbid, I can take part in some form of abuse? We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, first of all, give us the ability to live by the lessons, the teachings of Quran, by the teachings of the Prophet and his family, especially Fatemiyya al-Zahra salamullahi alayha. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the number of abuse reduces and inshallah goes to nothing in our communities. Okay. And we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the gift of sincerity and ikhlas, and to give us that conviction to accept our flaws, and also give us the motivation the strength to work on our flaws and to acquire, inshallah, a better level of iman and faith in every day, and purify us from the disease of hypocrisy, and give us the light of knowledge and free us from the darkness of ignorance, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Salawat ala Muhammadin wa